Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for October 30th, 2024. It is incredibly rainy outside right now, so you might hear that in the background. First off today, we're going to go to Oregon, where law enforcement officers arrested a LeGrand man on Friday, August 9th on a secret indictment warrant charging felony-level crimes against a minor. Greg Bruce Orton, 66, was taken into custody for luring a minor, first-degree SA, 2 counts of third-degree SA, and endangering the welfare of a minor. According to Oregon public records, the first 2 charges are felonies. The first occurrence happened sometime between July 22, 2019 and July 22, 2021, when the reporting party was under the age of 14. The other 2 instances happened around July 1, 2023, according to the incident. This was also reportedly when Orton provided the minor with either a visual representation, explicit verbal description, or narrative account of conduct in order to induce them into engaging in the act. He allegedly led the minor to witness an act. The $1,000 bail security deposit was posted for Orton, according to court records. He is out on a release agreement and is required to check in with his release officer once a week. Orton is prohibited from contacting the reporting party or their family and cannot visit areas where minors gather. Court records do not show an attorney in the system for Orton as of August 12th. He is due in court on August 27th for arraignment. I had a listener reach out and notify me that this man is a member of the church. They did not give me any other details. So if you know more about this situation and have more details that this man is in fact a member of the Mormon church, please let me know. I am certain that floodlit.org would also like to know. You can leave information in the comments, you can direct message me on TikTok, or you can reach out to me at generallyunquotable@gmail.com. Now let's go to the church Newsroom for an article that says to better understand questions related to how religion impacts mental health, particularly for Latter-day Saint teens and young adults, Justin Dyer, a professor at BYU, set up a years-long study. Dyer used data from a survey which followed over 1,000 Latter-day Saints and youth and young adults of other religions between the ages of 12 to 20 in Arizona and Utah starting in 2016. He found that temple attendance was correlated with better mental health, including lower levels of depression and anxiety. Temple attendance at age 16 was related to reduced depression at age 18. Youth with character traits such as honesty and humility increased their temple attendance between ages 14 and 16, according to Dyer's research. Dyer said other researchers, like Tyler Vanderwaley at Harvard, have estimated that nearly 40% of the increase in the self-unaliving rate could be attributed to the decrease in church attendance. We've decreased substantially in religiosity in society, while at the same time, mental health problems, self-unaliving rates have greatly increased, Dyer told the Church News podcast. Dyer also said that the temple's purpose can be beneficial for one's mental health. Getting outside of oneself is a wonderful help to our mental health, Dyer said. That's one of the reasons why religion, we find, is so good for people. In those connections with other individuals, that reaching out and being reached out to is something that's so critical in religion. And in my experience, that really is the key. It's not religion that brings people better mental health, it's connection. For centuries, we have found that connection in religion, and now that religion is dying, it's really important that we find other ways to find community. There, of course, will be a time where we struggle because we're so used to relying on religion, and we haven't built up the supports in other areas. Dyer warned against viewing temple worship as a box to check in order to cure mental illness. What we're finding is there are some wonderful things that may be an outcome of temple attendance, but it's certainly not going to be the outcome for every single person, Dyer said. He related the mental health benefit to that gained from exercise. Exercise is really good for mental health, but if somebody says, I'm going to exercise and my depression is going to disappear, certainly exercising will be a good thing for that individual on a lot of levels, but not necessarily going to automatically make the depression disappear. He understands, like many church leaders, that if they're going to make promises, they also have to give themselves an out. The church can cure your mental illness, only it probably won't, so don't be worried if it doesn't. In his research paper, Dyer quotes President Russell M. Nelson and his teachings on the temple. President Nelson said in April 2024 General Conference, the temple is the gateway to the greatest blessings God has in store for each of us, and he encouraged Latter-day Saints to worship in the temple as regularly as your circumstances permit. Temple attendance also correlated with long-term activity in the church, and I have a feeling this is what the church really wanted to know. If they're doing that that early on, they're more likely to stay a member of the church, they're more likely to attend church, they're more likely to be endowed. This also likely answers the question for me, why is the church building so many temples, or attempting to build so many temples? Because they know, and this study has shown, that if they get the youth in the temple early, those youth are more likely to stay in the church. When looking deeper into why temple attendance impacts whether someone stayed in the church, Dyer points to beliefs in the Restoration, the Book of Mormon, and modern-day prophets. Dyer's research also found that young men and young women who study their scriptures in their early teen years are more likely to increase their temple attendance in their later teen years. Scripture study was the strongest predictor of being endowed. According to Dyer's research, 55% of daily scripture readers were endowed, compared to 11% of those who had not read scriptures in the past year. We better get ready for church leaders to start harping on scripture reading for teens and temple attendance. Personal scripture study doesn't predict it really well at the younger ages. That's where family makes most of the difference. But if the family can help to instill scripture study, it then seems to make an impact later on, Dyer said. So none of these is a silver bullet, of course, right? And yet, what it does, it provides the very best ground for the seed to flourish, he said. And now let's go to the ex-Mormon subreddit for this story. So during a church meeting, a woman turned around, grabbed my son, and told him to stop talking so loudly. My son is on the spectrum, has ADHD, and OCD. No adult should ever grab a child in anger like that, ever. But with my son being special needs, it caused him to freeze in fear. For 30 to 45 minutes, he couldn't move or speak. He doesn't like to be touched at all, and he didn't know what to do. I waited, and when her children moved, I told her to never assault my child again, or I would call the cops. She then threatened to grab him again if she felt like she needed to. So I got up and called the cops. My son didn't want to press charges, but the cops told her to keep her hands to herself. Well, then my church leaders pulled me aside and started to lecture me about how I was acting crazy because I called the cops. I'm so done with this church. They protect whomever they so choose and refuse to protect the victims of violence. I can't even explain how angry this all makes me. I should have gone ahead and pressed charges even against my son's wishes. He shouldn't be victimized at church and not protected. When my youngest two kids were in nursery, the primary president was also the nursery leader because we lived in a very small branch. She came to me after the meeting one day and told me how she had physically assaulted my children during nursery and how proud of herself she was for doing something for my kids that I was unwilling to do for them. I was so shocked I didn't really know how to respond to her, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I did tell her in some words to never touch my children again. And now we will go back to the church news, where it says nearly 900 people, both Latter-day Saints and friends of other faiths, are finding refuge in Latter-day Saint meeting houses in the wake of tropical storm Trami, known as Typhoon Christine in the Philippines. The church's Philippines Facebook page reported on October 25th. Additionally, all missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in affected areas are safe and accounted for. Trami slammed into the country's northeastern province of Isabela on October 24th, the Associated Press reported. The deadliest of 11 storms to hit the Philippines this year. Trami moved toward Vietnam across the South China Sea after leaving at least 152 people dead and missing as of October 28th. More than 5.9 million people were in the storm's path in northern and central provinces. We join in heartfelt prayers for all those affected by Typhoon Christine and the heavy rains, flooding, and devastation it has caused, the Facebook post states. Our thoughts are with the families who have faced hardship and loss, and we sincerely hope for their safety, comfort, and strength during these challenging times. I wanted to read this article because when there was a hurricane in my area this past July, I talked about how the LDS Church did not open its church buildings to members who went without power, some for more than a week. If you can imagine, Texas in the middle of July, it was very hot. My own family went without power for 7 full days, and it was quite unbearable. But church buildings in the area that did have power and air conditioning did not open as cooling centers. So I am glad that the church finally, instead of just sending thoughts and prayers, actually opened their building to house people. Good job, Mormon Church. And now to this post that says, my son went to a birthday party yesterday. The hosts asked the neighborhood to help with an early bird trick-or-treating session. One of the houses handed out Books of Mormon. Come on. To which someone responded, who does that? Where do you live? I want to meet these people who have the audacity to do this to children. To which the original poster responded, in South Jordan, no idea what house. Probably good that I don't. LOL. Next, we will go to ABC in Australia, where it says, in this outback community, there's only one church. It's a taxing drive along rutted red dirt to Mulgabor, 250 kilometers northeast of Alice Springs. Elder and Sister Jackson, Mormon missionaries in their late 60s, are visiting the remote indigenous community for the third time in a week. The couple have journeyed all the way from Arizona and the United States on their own dime. They say they're on an outback mission from God. The Jacksons say every resident in this 70-person community is now a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is one of the most unique missions that we're aware of in the church, says Elder Jackson, swatting away a fly. Since arriving in Central Australia 18 months ago, the Jacksons have driven hundreds of kilometers between communities every day, preaching the Mormon gospel, sometimes singing hymns with residents and going hunting for witchetty grubs. The pair could have been sent almost anywhere in the world, Mexico, Mongolia, or Madagascar. They're among about 40 missionaries posted across the Northern Territory by the church. We feel right at home here, says Sister Jackson. We love these people and they have been so amazing to us. Sitting on her front porch under the midday sun, Marie Ryder uses a steady finger to trace a circuitous path over her latest painting. The Eastern Arunta woman was raised at the Santa Teresa Catholic Mission, southeast of Alice Springs, where she learned about ancient Aboriginal symbols and dot painting techniques from her mother. She married into the church 29 years ago and today paints stories from Mormon scriptures. Traditional and Bible stories combined. That's how I do it, she says proudly. The 4-panel canvas depicts the tree of life, the baptism of Jesus Christ, Prophet Joseph Smith's first vision, and the plan of salvation. Parables considered sacrosanct in Mormon iconography. One elder asked me to do a small one like this, Marie says. He showed it to everybody, and everybody liked it. Everybody wants one now. As an artist who the church constantly tried to get free art from, that is really bothersome to me. Across the region, Aboriginal artistic interpretations of teachings from the Book of Mormon, painted by locals, are used to help get the church's messages out in a way that can resonate with residents. Further afar, the Mormon Historical Art Department in Salt Lake City, Utah, has commissioned several works from Marie for a special exhibit set to go on display in 2026. I really hope, because they said commission, that they are paying her for this. Former real estate businessman Elder Reese Standley is responsible for the 130-odd missionaries across South Australia and the Northern Territory. He's enthused by an uptick in baptisms in the Northern Territory. He says there were 127 in the past 12 months. Where you focus your efforts, you get the results, he says. From his Adelaide office, it feels like we've landed on some fertile soil with people that are wanting to hear more about Jesus Christ. The missionaries have soaked that up and have been out there assisting and teaching where they can. But Australia has a long history of Christian missionaries entering Aboriginal communities and influencing their way of life, says Indigenous history researcher Dr. Laura Raidmaker. It's a complex story and something that individuals and communities are still wrestling with. A lot of older people talk about valuing the education and the opportunity to learn English, of course, not at the expense of learning their own languages and culture. But there are also a lot of people who look back at the mission history, the harsh discipline, the way shame was used to control people, and they saw a real sense of devastation. In Mulgabor, residents say Mormon teachings like avoiding alcohol, tea, and coffee, and donating a tithe to the church have changed things for the better. Gary Bird Patiani, a Mulgabor church leader thought to be the first Aboriginal man to serve a mission for the church, wants his community to continue strengthening its connection with the Mormon faith while retaining a link to ancient Aboriginal dreamings. My dad used to say to me, if you keep your culture strong, you will keep your community strong, he says. We hear stories both ways, God's way and our Aboriginal lore, and that's why we're keeping both strong and sharing them. And we will finish today with this little piece of advice from an unknown source. Growing up in a family that avoided conflict teaches you to fear confrontation. As an adult, this can lead to saying yes when you mean no, avoiding tough conversations, and feeling disconnected from your own needs. Healing starts with learning to face discomfort head on. I know there are some active members who listen to my channel and find discomfort in some of the things that I say. I encourage you to lean into that and stay curious. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.